Hey, good morning, Annette. Yeah, it's Uncle Lou here. That's right, it's me, Uncle Lou, and I'm live for you on LouTube today. So thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. Gonna take a pause from the trash talk educational video series I've been doing and get back to some best case, worst case. I will have the trash talk videos back again tomorrow. But listen, when I started that last weekend, to be honest with you, I thought it would only last a day or two. And that's lasted, 9 straight days now. You guys keep hitting the like goals, and I keep having to do more, and it's got me away from these best case, worst case scenario videos. I'm a man of my word. The last trash video did hit the like goal, so I will be doing the next trash talk video, but I'm gonna do it tomorrow. It's on Ohio State, one of the most requested ones I've had, so that'll be tomorrow. But we're gonna get back to the best case, worst case today, because my goal with these best case, worst case videos was to try to get done with them by the time spring practices ended, and we only have a couple more weeks of that. So I'm trying to get this series wrapped up. So up today is going to be the Michigan Wolverines. This one comes as a request over on the Patreon page from Patreon member Cody M. So Cody, I really appreciate you supporting the channel over on the Uncle Lou Patreon page. I hope you enjoy this Michigan preview. All right, Michigan Wolverines, of course, affectionately referred to here as the LSU of the Big Ten. Seem to have an NFL defense almost every single year, elite defense. NFL loves Michigan's defense. Offense average to below average most years, and always disappoints you at the end. Can't win the division, much less the conference. So Michigan, lately the LSU of the SEC. Will it be more of the same this year for the Michigan Wolverines? We're going to try to find that out in this video. Last year, pretty good year for Michigan up until the last game of the season, right? They lost their first game of the regular season. They lost their last game of the regular season. And they pretty much rolled in between. They were a top 10 team for the majority of the season. Most people, honestly, most people expected them to go in and win that Ohio State game last year. Michigan looked like the better team for the majority of the college football season last year between Michigan and Ohio State. And of course, we all know what happened in that game at Ohio State. Michigan went in and just got absolutely steamrolled. I mean, they just got ran out of the building. It was a really, really embarrassing loss, especially considering the fact that, of course, Harbaugh was winless against Ohio State at the time, now remains winless against Ohio State. And everyone sort of thought, you know, if he was going to knock off Ohio State, last year was the year to do it. Ohio State had taken an embarrassing loss to Purdue a few weeks earlier. There were rumblings at the time that Urban Meyer was on his way out the door, which if you were following Uncle Lou every day like you're supposed to, you would have been known that in September that was Urban Meyer's last year. And of course, he did end up leaving. But Ohio State mollywopped Michigan yet again. Yet another year goes by where Michigan spends a whole lot of time ranked really, really high and fails to even win the division. Of course, then they went out and got absolutely mollywopped in a bowl game by Florida, a game admittedly that Michigan had no interest in playing in. They were, you know, let down from what happened in the Ohio State game. Michigan went from being a potential playoff team to not even caring about the bowl game they were in, and they just got ran over by Florida. A lot of their players sat that game out, and they just never really showed up for that game. So, I mean, again, congratulations to Florida. You did what you needed to do. Florida showed up ready to go. Michigan didn't, and the scoreboard reflected that. So, was it a terrible year for Michigan last year? No. The problem is Michigan fans are just tired of having that type of year, right? I'm a Georgia fan, obviously. If you don't believe me, you can read the comments. There'll be a million people pointing it out in this video down there. But Georgia has been through some similar things to what Michigan is going through right now. Georgia did finally sort of break through a couple of years ago, win the SEC, make the playoffs, won a playoff game, of course, before losing in the national title game in overtime. But, you know, you look at Mark Richt's last 5, 6, 7 years in Athens, unable to win the conference consistently, though, ranked pretty high, winning 9, 10 games a year. That's sort of where Michigan is right now in terms of how their fans are feeling. They're tired of losing to Ohio State every year. They did beat Michigan State last year, but that only puts Harbaugh at 2-2, I believe it is, against Michigan State. and he's yet to even win the division. Mark Richt, even up until the point he was fired, was winning divisions. I mean, he won the division in 2012, fired after the 2015 season. So, but anyway, can they get over the hump? I mean, that's the big question when you talk about Michigan. We're going to go through the schedule like we always do. I'm going to talk about a few of the players they lost, who's coming back, some, their signing class, some freshmen. We're going to go through the schedule. We're going to do all that. But the only real question people want to know, Michigan fans in particular, is can we get over can we beat Ohio State? Can we win the Big Ten? Michigan fans want to win a national title. I get that. But honestly, if you could fast forward to January 15th of next year right now and tell Michigan fan that they beat Ohio State, they won the division, they won the Big Ten, but they got left out of the playoffs for whatever reason. Maybe it was a 10-2 type situation, 11-2, after you win the Big Ten title game. Most Michigan fans, while that's not the type of season they're hoping for, it would be an improvement over what they've had. And I'm not suggesting Michigan will do that. Maybe they go undefeated and make the playoffs. Anyway, let's talk about who they lost. Okay, there's two position groups that concern me heading into this year if I'm a Michigan fan. And Michigan's going to be a little weird to look at for next year because I think you're going to have some of the opposite questions heading into the season that you've had in years past. And what I mean by that is Michigan has had an elite defensive front over the last few years. Rashawn Gary, gone to the NFL. Devin Bush, is that his name? Gone to the NFL. You've recruited at an insane level, particularly on defense, particularly on the front seven. Not sure you can replace those guys. You lose Aubrey Solomon, a very highly recruited player, sort of a backup role he had at Michigan. He transfers out to Tennessee. A lot of question marks to me about Michigan's front seven. Now, you still have a couple of stars that return, but depth-wise, I just wonder if Michigan is going to have as elite of a front seven as they have had the last couple of years. And the second big question mark I have about Michigan heading into this season. Who's calling me now? Ain't nobody got time. Ain't nobody got time for that. I got bronchitis. Stop it. Jesus. Anyway, the running back position. You lose your top two rushers from last year. You had the one guy went over 1,000 yards. I think I had to go. Oh, Higdon. Yeah, that was his name. Your first 1,000-yard rusher since 2011. He's gone, and Chris Evans, unfortunately, flunked out. I'm not here to make jokes about that. I try not to joke about players and grades and stuff like that, but the reality of the situation is he wasn't able to cut it academically and has been dismissed from the team. Those were your two leading rushers from last year. Your leading rusher that returns, the player on your roster that had the most yards last year, walk-on, True Wilson. He's your leading returning rusher. Now, you got two redshirt freshmen and a true freshman that will be competing for some serious playing time. So the cupboard is not bare, but in terms of experience at the running back position, Michigan's in a really bad spot. You got the one guy, True Wilson, and he was a walk-on. Okay, so you're going to need some production out of these two redshirt freshmen or hope that this true freshman coming in can pick things up in a hurry and provides you with some depth at the running back position because you are hurting there. Now for some good news for Michigan. New offensive coordinator from Alabama. The guy put up a ton of points. Now, Alabama was loaded offensively last year, so I don't think anybody expects Michigan's offense this coming year to look anything like Alabama's from last year, but you needed an offensive coordinator. You really didn't even have a dedicated offensive coordinator last year, and unfortunately, it showed, and this has been a theme for Michigan under Jim Harbaugh. Defense way up here, offense struggling to catch up. Now, Shea Patterson comes back. Shea Patterson had a good year last year, right? Not great. He reminds me of Jake Fromm a little bit. He doesn't make mistakes. He completes passes at a very high percentage. He completes 65% of his passes, threw for 2,600 yards, 22 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. Those are Jake Fromm numbers. Now, Jake Fromm had a couple hundred more yards and a few more touchdowns and about the same number of interceptions, but Jake Fromm also played in a couple more games, right? Because he played in the conference championship game. So these are Jake Fromm stats here. Now, the difference between Patterson and Jake Fromm, Patterson had 275 yards rushing. That doesn't seem like a lot, and it's not. And I'm not here to try to convince you that Shea Patterson is a dual threat or a mobile or a runaround type quarterback. But when you see a quarterback that has 273 yards rushing, what that tells you is he's got some mobility in the pocket, right? If protection breaks down, he can slide out of there and he can take off and get you a first down or two every game if he needs to. You see a quarterback with between 200 and 300 yards, that's what that means, okay? Jake Fromm had negative 27 yards rushing last year as a comparison, okay? So I think you should be happy with Patterson and what he gave you last year. If he can improve a little bit this year, you guys will be good to go at the quarterback position. And if this offensive coordinator from Bama can work some magic with him, then you guys could go from having one of the worst offenses in the Big Ten to having one of the best. Not just because of Shea Patterson, but your wide receiver situation is kind of ridiculous too. You have three, what I think are pretty elite wide receivers. And probably the best position group on your team this year, honestly, is wide receiver, which is a drastic change from what we've seen the last couple of years where you were really led by your defense. But Nico Collins, Donovan, the three named guy, Donovan Peoples-Jones, and Tariq Black. These are three playmakers at the wide receiver position. If the offensive line, which I think you returned 4 of your 5 starters on the offensive line from last year, a good offensive line last year, so you're going to have a great offensive line this year. If Patterson can get a little bit better, if Gaddis at offense coordinator can open up that offense a little bit, and you can figure out ways to get these wide receivers the ball, it's going to make it a lot easier to break in some of those new running backs. And Michigan could go from having one of the most overlooked offenses to having an offense in the Big Ten that really should be feared. Defense, we've talked about a little bit. The front seven. Defensive back-wise, you lose Long to the NFL. He's gone. Kennel graduates. He's gone. 5-star freshman Daxton Hill. He'll probably play right away. Michigan has a history lately under Harbaugh of playing a lot of these highly recruited freshmen, so we'll see. And, of course, you still have Lavert Hill. I think he was all Big Ten in your secondary last year. The question marks, of course, are going to be replacing Devin Bush, Rashawn Gary, like we mentioned. So we'll see. You've recruited really well on the defensive side of the ball. You have a lot of talent. A lot of it's unproven. We'll see if they can step up this year. But on paper, it looks like your offense will be way better this year than what we've seen in years past under Harbaugh. But let's put the schedule up and take a look at it. All right, here we go. And, of course, 2 bye weeks this year. Not a change in college football. I mention this every time I do one of these videos. Not a change in college football. It's just the way the calendar falls this year to keep everything lined up with having the championship games the first weekend in December. Required 2 bye weeks to start the game, to start the season at the end of August, beginning of September. So anyway, the first 2 games of the season are at home against non-con opponents, Middle Tennessee and Army. These are 2 teams that you should be able to outmatch. Now, we did see Army almost sneak up on Oklahoma last year, but that was a triple option situation against one of the worst defenses in the history of football. Don't expect that to be much of an issue this year. Middle Tennessee, probably the best or second best team in the state of Tennessee behind Vandy, but still shouldn't be able to compete with you. You would think you'd start your season off with a couple of home wins there. Then you get your first bye week. This is a little early here. Luckily you have a second bye week this year, but this is a little early in the season for where I like to see a bye week. But it comes at a pretty good time in terms of scheduling because your first conference game of the year, right after your bye week here, you got to go on the road to Camp Randall and jump around over there at Whiskey. Haven't done a preview or one of these videos on Wisconsin yet, but let me take a wild guess here and say that Wisconsin's going to have a really, really good offensive line. They're going to have a really, really good running game. Their defense is going to be in the top half of the Big Ten. They're going to have some sort of game-managing QB. They're going to struggle to score over 24 points a game, and they're going to go somewhere between 10-2, 9-3, 11-1, somewhere in there, just because that's just what they do every single year. They did lose their quarterback. Anyway, this isn't a Wisconsin preview. That'll be a tough game. It's on the road. It's at Wisconsin. First conference game. I think Michigan right now is a better team than Wisconsin. If you'd asked me that a season or 2 ago, I probably wouldn't have said that. But right now, to me, I think Michigan's probably the better team. Does that mean Michigan will win? No. At Wisconsin, one of the toughest places to play in the Big Ten. And they're going to have a pretty good team, even if it's not maybe as good as it's been a couple of years ago or whatever. So, tricky game there. 2 more home games after that against Rutgers and Iowa. Rutgers you should handle without a problem. No offense, Comic Dude. Comic Dude, a Rutgers fan on the channel here. Shows up on the live streams all the time. Really good dude. No hard feelings for Rutgers here, but Michigan obviously looks like the better team. Iowa, more of a test, I think, than Rutgers. But again, I'll say the same thing here. Michigan should be at a place right now where they're not really having to worry about beating Iowa, particularly at home. So you would think this would be a game where Michigan would be a pretty big favorite, right? Back-to-back road games coming up here at Illinois and at Penn State. Penn State, similar to Wisconsin here. A tough place to play. They'll probably put this game at night and do you one of them whiteouts that they like to do up there. I like James Franklin as a coach. I think he's probably the best coach in the Big Ten, honestly. Penn State, a little bit of a disappointment last year after coming really, really close the year before. Again, I think this is a situation where Michigan is probably a better team than Penn State, but this is on the road, right in the meat of your season here. This is one of those games where things could go either way. I think you have to at least consider the possibility that that could be a loss. Not saying you'll lose, but I think that has to be considered as a possibility in terms of how we do these videos. Best case, worst case, could go either way. Illinois, you should handle them. I forgot Illinois had a team, as did everyone else. And then a big game here, a big non-con game at home against Notre Dame, a rematch from opening weekend last year, one of the best games of the season. It was a great game last year. They got you at their place. This year, Notre Dame has to return the favor and come to the big house. I don't see Notre Dame making a return trip to the playoffs. I mean, spoiler alert, I know. They're going to have at least one loss already by this point in the season. We already know because they have to play at Georgia week 4, which they're going to lose that game by 3 scores or more. So they'll probably be demoralized enough by this point in the season that you can go ahead and hand them another beating. Take our leftovers. But for the purposes of this video, it's Ian Book comes back for them. Notre Dame thinks he's the next Joe Montana. So we'll see. On the road at Maryland. Team had a lot of turmoil last year. A couple of big wins last year, though, particularly that Texas win. But again, congrats to Texas on a historic 4-loss season. We know you're back. And then that takes you into your second bye week. And then coming out of the bye week, you got a tough 3 stretch of games here. Michigan State, at Indiana, and then home against Ohio State. I think Indiana should be a big favorite. Michigan State and Ohio State, you get them both at home. Eventually you gotta beat both these teams. I mean, you just have to. You beat Michigan State last year, great. You got ran out of the building by Ohio State, though. For Michigan to have this type of season they want to have, they have to build towards this point in the season, and they have got to win these last 3 games. You'll win at Indiana, but you've got to beat Michigan State, and you've got to beat Ohio State, okay? People are tired of putting you in the top 10 every year just to watch you crap yourself in November every single season. I mean, so anyway, that's a brief run through of the schedule there. Non-conference games, couple of games that should be really easy. And then, of course, the Notre Dame game is the one everyone will be looking at. What about your road games? Those are sometimes tricky. At Wisconsin will be tough. At Penn State will be tough. And then Illinois, Maryland, and Indiana. Those are 3 very winnable road games. Whiskey and Penn State, a little more questionable. What about toughest 3-game stretches? I like to look at this when I look at a schedule here because a lot of times you look at a team and you say, well, they're better than Team A, Team B, and Team C. But if A, B, and C are all pretty good teams, you'll see a team trip up somewhere in there. At Penn State, home against Notre Dame, and at Maryland, that's a pretty tough stretch there. Not that Maryland's that great of a team. And then at the end of the season, depending on how Michigan State's looking, Michigan State, at Indiana, and Ohio State. For the toughest 3-game stretch, though, I'm going to go with at Penn State, Notre Dame, and at Maryland just because 2 of those 3 games are on the road. You look at your last 3 games, Michigan State, Indiana, and Ohio State, 2 of those 3 are at home. So, but both of those stretches, those are 2 tough stretches of games there. Potential trap games. At Indiana, I would probably give that as my best chance of a trap game there. We saw Indiana, they beat Ohio State a couple of seasons ago or came close. At Illinois, they're just way too terrible to be a trap. If I had to pick up one to be a trap game, I would say at Indiana. So what are we looking at here? Best case, worst case scenario for Michigan. I can't believe I'm going to do this to myself. I've been so high on Michigan the last couple of years, and they made me look like a fool. And I've been saying over the last couple of months, I'm not falling for it anymore, that I'm not picking them to do anything anymore. They're going to have to prove me wrong before I go with them again. After doing some research this morning on Michigan, all these people they got coming back on offense, quarterback returns, those wide receivers. Do I trust Jim Harbaugh on offense? No, but hopefully he really does give it over to Gaddis, and with all that returning talent you have, you can improve. I do trust Michigan's defense, even though they lose a lot of talent. So will the defense be as dominant as it has been the last couple of years? Maybe not, but I think the offense has potential to be a lot better. I can't believe I'm doing this. I'm going to put Michigan's best case scenario for the regular season at 11-1. I think it's possible they get on a roll and run through the majority of their schedule. If you win at Wisconsin, that'll put you at 3-0, and then you play Rutgers, Iowa, and Illinois. You should be then sitting at 6-0 when you go on the road at Penn State. Potential loss, maybe. And then you got the Notre Dame game, potential loss, and then Michigan State and Ohio State. If you can get on a run, I'm going to say best case scenario 11-1. I know Michigan wants to go 12-0, win the Big Ten, and then end up 15-0 with a national title. You can do that at 11-1 though. You can go 11-1, and depending on who you lose to, you can still win your division, get into the Big Ten title game, and win it, and be sitting right there for a playoff spot. I'm going to put best case scenario at 11-1. I don't see you going any worse than 8-4. Now, I think there's more than 4 tough games on here, but I don't think Michigan would lose all of those. I think Whiskey could be tough. Potentially Iowa, Penn State, Notre Dame, Michigan State, Ohio State. I mean, so there's 6 or 7 maybe tough games on here. No way you lose all of those. I'm going to say best case scenario 11-1. Worst case scenario for Michigan, 8-4. Of course, when the summertime rolls around towards the end of June through the middle of August, I'm going to do an entire series of videos where I will pick winners and losers game by game. This is more just a brief overview of the schedule and the season. I'm still going to do that series of videos over the summer, so I'll go back through the schedule again, and I'll decide on an exact record that I think Michigan is going to have and exactly who I think they'll lose to, if anybody. Anyway, I really appreciate you guys watching the live shows. This week are going to be Tuesday night and Thursday night at 10 p.m. Eastern. It's a call-in show. You should join us over there if you haven't already. We have a great time. Take calls from all over the place. We talk college football, whatever else is going on in the world of sports. And you guys join us over there. It's a lot of fun. Anyway, I appreciate you guys watching, and have a great morning.